Alright guys, we have Unbroken.
By Laura Hildenbrand.
Okay. So first off, the summary. Main character here is Louis Zamperini. As a child, he's very mischievous and gets into trouble a lot. Has both parents, which is pretty good for that time. An Italian family. Gets a little, I don't know if racism is the right word, but gets some racism towards him for being Italian. As he grows older, he has an older brother named Pete. Pete helps him to finally channel all his mischievousness into something productive and starts him out on the track and field. So Pete basically says, alright, go run. Practice, do some running. Louis does some running and he finds out that he's actually not too bad at it. So he continues to train through his childhood and into his teens, and he just becomes a really great track runner throughout high school. It got to a point where he would almost get to a 4-minute mile, which was almost unheard of at that time. This is in the early 1930s where not a lot of people, no one has ever broken the 4-minute mile yet. He keeps running. He finally gets a track scholarship to University of Southern California. Goes there, runs a few meets, and then he sets his goals for the 1936 Olympics, or the Nazi Olympics. His favorite thing to run is the the mile, the 1 mile. When he realizes that he's not going to make the mile run, he decides that he's going to run the 15,000 meter run, which I couldn't quite tell you how many miles that is, but it's a pretty long distance. And he only has about 2 to 4 weeks to train. And somehow in that time, he actually makes the trials and he actually gets a spot on the U.S. Olympic team to make it. So he goes, runs, actually shakes hands with Adolf Hitler, talks to him a little bit, comes back, and is really getting ready to focus on the next Olympics in 4 years and starts practicing for his mile. When all of a sudden World War II breaks out and he decides to sign up for the Air Force. Now, as a child, Louis went up into a plane once and was deathly terrified of it and never wanted to do it again. But somehow he got back into it and joined the Air Force.
Well, he joined the Air Force, and that's when he got deployed to a B-24 plane, and pretty much he trained with his, what he called his family, his crewmate.
The squad group.
Yeah, squad group, which was pretty much his family at that time. They trained for, I think, a couple years.
Yeah.
And finally, after all this years of training, they finally got deployed to go some missions. They dropped some bombs on some Japanese islands, and then one mission, their plane got really bad shot up, and they were surprised. Everybody was surprised that plane was still flying in the air, how badly damaged it was, and they lost a couple of crew members in that battle. So then after that, they got assigned some new crew members, the ones that died, and then they got like a kind of an old rundown airplane, which the Army gave them because they needed them to go bomb another site.
No, it wasn't bomb another site. It was actually a search mission to find aircraft that had fallen. But while on their way out there, their plane also goes down. So they're also stranded in the ocean. Plane crashes. Only three people survive. Louis, Philip, also known as Phil, and then a guy named Mac. Those three live on a life raft for about 47 days. at sea, which is a pretty astonishing amount of time to
Yeah.
live on the open
Yeah.
sea.
And Mac, the first night they were on the raft, Mac ate all their food supplies. So they were without food, and they had 3 small canisters of just water. And pretty much they battled sharks countless times, and they even had a Japanese plane come up past them, 6 or 7 times?
Yep. And
Trying to shoot them, which they missed them all times. So, and then finally, after like the 47th day, which they thought was land, was actually a Japanese ship, which took them in, actually fed them very well, gave them endless amounts of food, and then they told them that they were going to be sent to a POW camp, and that's where. Steve, you want to finish that off, Brad?
Basically, that's where I say the good stuff happens, because that's where all the action occurs. If you could continue reading, you finally get to meet some other people he encounters and like the life in the prisoner of war camps, and you get to meet one of the really if you guys have watched the movie, like the main scene is where he gets beat up by the leader of the camp, and you get to meet him in this book. His name is Birdie, and the bird. Okay, and yeah, he's really cruel, and we'll get more in detail on that when we go over some of our characters. Is that good for this summer, you think?
yeah, I
Is
think
it?
so.
Okay.
So he faces hardship as a teen because he gets into trouble.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then he pushes through track.
Yeah.
And then he's in the military and has to face his fear of flying.
Yeah.
Then he has to survive 47 days on open sea, and then a POW camp.
He went
Multiple
Multiple.
people.
Yeah.
Okay.
He bounces back
He
and
went
forth.
through a lot of hard stuff that I don't think anybody could really do. From bombings to crashing a plane to
I know.
surviving.
Sounds like
Is
a
that
tough
what
life.
makes this book unique?
I think
It's
it
just
made
a whole
it
journey
unique.
how he started out.
I just having the courage to keep on going and pushing through after one hard, you can say pretty much nightmare after another, is what he survived through.
Yeah. Okay.
So our main characters, we have Louis Zamperini. Like I said, troubles as a child. Wants to run in the 1936 Olympics. Actually runs the fastest last lap of that time in that event. Enlists in the Air Force. Survives a plane crash. Survives a bunch of different POW camps. Gets beaten often, like most other prisoner of wars in Japan. After he comes back from the war, though, he has terrible nightmares and flashbacks and just terrible PTSD from the POW camps, especially from the bird. He just sticks in his mind and just can't get rid of him sometimes. Later on, finds God and can finally not relax, but calm down a little bit inside himself.
This is Pete Zamperini, Louis' older brother. He was also a track star at the University of Southern California. He helps Louis find his place in track. So what I kind of thought, Pete was the one that, he knew that Louis was heading off in the wrong direction. Pete was the one that kind of pulled Louis back on the right direction. Said, you're going to be with me throughout the whole summer. We're going to train day and night for track. So I know you have the talent. So pretty much I thought Pete was Louis' savior at this time, because if it wasn't for Pete, I think Louis would have headed in the wrong direction, probably ended up in jail, or even worse, dead. And then he serves as a stateside Navy trainee officer during the war, and after the war he gets married and becomes a football and track coach.
Probably gotta hurry up a little bit.
Okay.
Oh, Russell Allen Phillips, or Phil. He's Louis' best friend during the war, pilot on Louis' bomber crew, called aka the Superman, flies the Green Hornet when the plane crashes, becomes a POW with Louis, survives and meets up with Louis later after the war, heading back to the U.S., marries his sweetheart when he comes back to the U.S. and stays in touch with Louis from there on out.
Okay, the bird. Okay, he's a guard that's mentally unstable, really cruel, and treats his prisoners really bad. It's really
Okay,
bad.
so he treats them bad because they're his prisoners, or he treats them bad even compared to other guards.
Like-
Compared to,
Yeah.
Compared, he's more he's up there.
there's a spot in the book where
Yeah.
says that he actually gets sexual pleasure from beating people.
Which is really cool.
Yeah,
He's a disciplinary officer, which is, kind of explains why, you know, he disciplines them. When there's sometimes no reason to, he kind of just does it for fun as well, which is kind of sick. He likes it, like, kind of sick, you know. Likes to torture prisoners and beat them. After the war, he goes into hiding because he was a war criminal. And if you watch the end of the movie, it doesn't really say it in the book, but actually they asked if he wanted to meet Louis, and he just, you know, didn't. So he was hiding. And
yeah, you can definitely tell that Bird had something specific, like something set out for Louis. He set up Louis for failure.
yeah, he was also like, wasn't he like in charge of another prisoner war camp and requested
Yeah.
to have, he requested to have Louis with him again, just so he could torture him even more.
Okay, so big ideas. My big idea is the Olympic dream and overcoming obstacles at a young age. Him being a troubled child early on in life, and how he just found the motivation and got the clear consciousness to focus on track, and having his brother help him out to become that track superstar, if you will. Just kind of having that mindset that he can do what he puts his mind to, as long as he puts the effort into it.
My big idea was the courage to keep going at sea. Pretty much Louis was the rock of those three men on sea. And without Louis, they would have all died. Because during the crash, Phil had a really bad head injury, so he couldn't really do anything. Mac was a brand new brand new crewman on the ship, so he didn't really know Louis and Phil, so he just kind of sat there quietly. So Phil told Louis that he was captain now and took charge, and Louis pretty much got them water, fed them, and pretty much kept their minds sharp, because after 47 days you get fuzzy or crazy, so Louis was pretty much the savior of keeping those other guys surviving, but the biggest thing I wonder is how Louis kept himself from keep going himself.
Okay, and my big idea was a journey that seems unbelievable, with a little bit of hope, anything is possible. Basically saying, from all the stuff they went through, especially Louis, that, you know, it sounds like a fiction book, something that's not real, but in reality, all he did is have a little bit of hope and got through everything, and accomplished a lot of things, and survived, which is really important.
So, do you think that applies to a lot of war stories? The unbelievableness of it?
Yeah, but more so, I think this one might stand out a little bit more, just because, for one thing, crashes, survives that. Even before that, a troubled childhood, he's not in jail, but becomes an Olympic runner. Okay. Then right when he thinks he has it, right when he thinks he has it all, goes to war, crashes, like I said, survives 47 days on sea, which is like, who can even really do that?
TR.
That's like,
Broke the record.
yeah, breaks a lot of records in track.
I think
Survive.
TR did that.
Okay.
Let them
Yeah.
have their...
Okay, then also survives like 3 or 4 prisoner war camps, which is also really like surprising as well, especially
Like Shrek's onions.
yes. So
Layers on layers.
okay.
I mentioned TR.
Okay.
Okay.
I got answer your question, but we gotta go. Hey, critical response.
Okay, the first one we
Hold on a second. Did you guys want to pause there and come back to that tomorrow in class?
Should we?
Would that do
Yeah.
better justice to your text?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do that.
I got a quick question for Jared. Did all 3 of the guys survive on the raft?
No.
No,
That's what I-
Mac died
Mac.
halfway through.
How?
Sad, I thought.
Huh?
Just like
Just
starvation.
Isn't he the one that paid everything?
Yeah.
That's kind of ironic.
Was it her?
That's
Okay, we're going to pause there in their presentation.
Yes,